This person, he's got issues, he's masking it.
But they'll project onto you.
Yeah, exactly what he was doing was, I went in and I made a helpful suggestion. He almost picked a fight with me, got very stroppy with me, very narky with me, very quickly. But I knew where it was coming from.
Because you know you're not going to argue with that person, because they're arguing with
Pointless.
a brick wall, and they will just accelerate it, make you look like a bad person. And
Yeah.
you could even classify in stereotypical Asian culture being diagnosed with disabilities and mental health issues and neurodiversity and stuff as being a taboo thing, because nobody's going to want you X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah.
Basically, it's a process where Allah strips all the mask off you and exposes you for who you really are. But it's not a punishment. It's like
awakening.
It's an awakening, yeah. But that's a very difficult process, number one. And it's a lengthy process. It doesn't happen within 5 days.
It doesn't.
And you have to be isolated for that.
One of the masks is you being the perfect son. You're trying to be a good son. You're trying to be a good spouse. You're trying to be a good sibling. You're trying to be a good friend. You're not trying to keep everything up. And especially as a person with ADHD and stuff, when you're undiagnosed with all these sort of things, you're just juggling all these things. Assalamu alaikum everyone, I'm Faisal. I'm an artist, I'm an entrepreneur, I have my own sort of creative agency, and I'm an advocate for neurodiversity. Thank you very much for Khuram for having me on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to talking.
Okay, so you're third generation.
Yeah.
And then, so you're third generation in this country?
Yeah, in the UK, yeah.
So your first generation was your granddad that came to this country?
Yeah.
What year was that?
Around the 1950s, mid-1950s, 1960s.
So about early 60s?
Yeah. Early
okay.
60s.
And then your dad was born here?
My mum was born here.
Your mum was born here as well?
Yeah, my dad was born over there. My mum was born here.
Okay. And then, so you're now the third generation here. So that's the same as me. I'm third generation as well.
And there was my granddad had 4 brothers.
Right. And they all came?
No. So my dada, my granddad, he stayed in Pakistan.
Right.
And my nana, he was the first one to come over. He was the eldest brother.
Right.
So when he came over, he ended up working in factories in Peterborough, and he ended up, even though we were from the Punjab or Gujarat side of Sarai Lamgir and Jhelum, he managed to bring over people from Mirpur and Kashmir to work in the factories in Peterborough.
Okay.
So one of the first Pakistanis to settle in Peterborough, because we had the Italians there, we had the brick factories as well there. So it was a very sort of industrial place. So that's where the journey sort of began with him. And he was sponsored by the people in his area in Pakistan to come over to the UK.
Right. Yeah, people used to help each other in those days. You used to get lots of groups of people. They used to help. That doesn't happen anymore. You don't get a wholesale group of people helping people in that way anymore, do you?
And there was 25 people in a room. And that was just on the day shift, sleeping in a room. Then you had a night shift, they used to do cooking, sleeping, everything like that. But they said they had a lot of unity at that time.
Yeah, I think this is what I've picked up on this, that that generation, despite the hardship that they've had and everything that they've had, the unity, that we don't have that unity now.
No. I think now everybody's got the money and they've forgotten the struggle that they've put on and the grandparents and everybody put through to make them established, to make us established for what we are today.
But when we were last speaking, you said that there was a lot of ancestral trauma. Tell me about that.
So I really didn't know what intergenerational trauma or any of these sort of things were. But then when we met, what was it, 2 years ago, you were discussing how you believe intergenerational trauma impacted you. And that, after coming to Nottingham and meeting you last time, and Faisal Amjad, your guest, who's a good friend of mine as well, meeting him previously, and you were talking about how your generation's been impacted by this, and that was, I think, the first sort of big introduction to me. There's something called intergenerational trauma, and then I started looking back into it, and I believe it's it's passed down for hundreds and thousands of years, basically. Like they say, it's in your genes and stuff. But for me, the last sort of few generations, so up to my granddad and above, that's the most I sort of know. We were sort of from a lower caste in Pakistan, and that's like ancestral occupations, and that means Lohar. My caste is Lohar, and that comes from the blacksmiths. My nani side were the Mistri, so that means builders. So we were very hands-on family and stuff like that. And coming from a lower caste in Pakistan, a lower class as well, that meant that just generally people are hard workers from our communities. But obviously the British came over, and my granddad, he was involved in like building. My great granddad, he was involved in like building the railways in Pakistan, and even was involved in Mangla Dam.
Wow,
so,
that's a big deal.
My granddad as well from Pakistan, he was involved in that as well. He travelled over to the Middle East as well, to go and work as well. I think it's like Oman, or no, there was Oman, there was Misr. So no, they didn't know what any of this was. They were just living on survival. Like the basic instruction was you live, survive, and provide for the family, and be a Muslim. That's what it was really for them. But obviously now we're more aware of everything going on. And we've obviously been brought up in that cycle, but there's a lot of strengths to it. But because they were unaware of obviously the negative consequences of certain decisions or certain things and their lifestyles, and being under stress and under trauma themselves, that gets passed through to us, and then it starts to get exposed.
What has that looked? So two questions. What has that trauma looked like on you, and what is the commonality you've seen between your ancestors? And the second thing is, what has your journey been like since then?
So for me, I think in certain ways, I think as humans, we're sort of built to be resilient, be resilient. And for me, I think the trauma, it starts to show up like, obviously when you're young, they say like your nervous system and stuff develops in the sort of first 3 years of your child, when a child's born. So for that was the same with them, your great ancestors, whatever. Yeah. And so for me, I think it starts to impact your personality a bit. How
did it like acutely impact you though?
So for me, I think, so building into my nervous system, so I'm a creative person as well. Yeah. So for me, a lot of my emotions are deep inside, and I'm very, very, like, people don't know this, but you could probably tell it a bit, but I'm sensitive. So when there's news or information, or
but when you say you're because sensitive has different connotations.
Yeah.
When you say sensitive, is it like if I said to you, I'm just coming up with something abstract. If I said to you, "Oh, your nose is too pointy," are you that kind of sensitive, or sensitive as in you're just very aware of little changes and little things?
In every sense, like if you said that to me about my nose, I'll be like, that's minor to me. But if you were gonna belittle like my personality, or project something onto me that I'm not, and I know myself,
that upsets you deeply.
Like I'm not bothered. Like I'm not bothered. I was fat. I was big. I used to overeat. Compensate like with all growing up by overeating. Comfort food, and obviously got addictions and all that sort of stuff. But that's obviously how your nervous system responds to trauma.
Because people say to me, I'm sensitive, but what is meant by, like if you, like an accelerator on a car, when if an accelerator is sensitive, you only touch it a little bit and the car does that. And if it's not sensitive, you tap it and it doesn't do anything. I'm sensitive in that way. Like I can pick, if somebody's being insincere, I can tell very quickly.
I could read the room. Like, I'm very hypersensitive in terms of that. Like hypersensitive.
Like the vibe of a person.
Read the room. I could read the vibe of people.
What's my vibe that you're reading right now? And you can be completely honest. You can be completely honest.
For me, you've got a chilled vibe, but you also got a vibe that's very analytical. Right. Like, but you also like, you have the ability to sort of motivate as well. Oh, okay. So when it comes to like, for example, me and you talking like last time, for example, there were certain pain points in your life that you learned from. Yeah. But then by just interacting with me, you telling me like, just because of my posture and stuff like that, you're like, yo, Faisal, like there might be some trauma and stuff.
Okay. That's just love, bro. It's just love.
But for me, I read on everything. Like,
that's me as well.
Even if there's somebody in the shopping supermarket, and
I'm the same.
Look at a different way, or I could sense a negative energy, and I think over time in life, I didn't know about this sort of stuff, and I just consumed whether it was good energy or bad energy. But obviously this world, you can say there's a lot of negative energy in this world, especially if you're not aware, especially now it's like become more and more apparent. But noticing even how that impacts you on a physiological level, like,
how is that impacting you?
So in the last one, obviously with the Middle East Palestine conflict and stuff,
at the time of recording, we're like 2 weeks into the Palestinian. Well, we're about 3 weeks into the Palestinian conflict.
30 days.
No, sorry, we're a month in now.
Month now. Yeah. So the first sort of 2 weeks, I believe. So my normal trauma response was to trauma. I've got ADHD. Right. I was recently last week on Monday. Actually, I was diagnosed with autism, high functioning level 1 autism as well. But all of these sort of things what they've done to me is made me realize to look inside. And I forgot what the
No,
topic.
but I was asking you, like, how is it, because you were saying that this trauma affect,
So
the
all the
sensitivity
symptoms
affects
of
your
what they've done, it
physiological,
intensifies all my symptoms across the areas.
Which are what?
Which, so for example, with the ADHD is the impulsivity and the hyperactivity, but I also have the withdrawn. And
okay, but the impulsivity and the hyperactivity, how does that manifest in you?
So me, I start overworking as well, so that's also a trauma response as well.
Okay.
So
like your creative stuff you do, you end up like just over
everything. My sleeping pattern goes out the window.
Right.
I could sleep late. Like I'll become a workaholic as well.
Right.
But
you seem so well adjusted. You don't seem somebody like who just suddenly kind of,
because I mask it.
Right.
So growing up, I've been masking my entire life, and then when it obviously came to my ADHD diagnosis in November 2021, and dyspraxia diagnosis, then all these sort of things, and my life was like going very chaotic at that time when I met you. That's when it got me real. Like since then, I had to sort of pause, take a real deep look at myself. Like, what's going on under the scenes? How am I reacting? How am I behaving?
It's a period of like deep self-reflection.
How are people reacting to me?
Yeah.
What's people's views and opinions on me? Who are my closest people? What are friendships? All of these sort of things I was starting to look into. Why am I even watching? What music or what TV? What sounds? What information I'm looking into?
Right.
And I think it manifested a lot in having growing up, like I put on many masks and had different identities as well.
Right.
So there was even a point where I pierced my own ear within split seconds of 10 minutes. I pierced my ear, wore an earring for like 2 months, got into the wrong crowd in school, got kicked out of school.
Flipping heck.
So all of this was like people pleasing.
Right.
Then you're a Pakistani, you're a Muslim, you're British,
and you're picking fights with
all
people.
of these sort of things. So you're trying to develop yourself in a world, but you're growing up in an external world.
Right.
And this leads to the topic.
I want to ask you more about this masking now that you've brought this up.
Yeah.
Because so there's two reasons why I want to ask you this. One is I wrote an article about this quite a few years back now, about 5 years ago, which was talking about the ages between kind of like 20 to 26, or was it 26 to 30? I can't remember. About the formative years of what I say people in their 20s now are still children, in the sense that they're still learning about themselves,
Basics.
right? And one of the things that I said in there is that they create a personality that's a mask of who they actually are. It's an edited version of them.
Yeah.
Because of social media, they've learned how to project an edited version.
False version of themselves, and that becomes
themselves.
their real version of them in real life,
Which makes it worse, right?
Makes it worse.
So my kind of the thing that I'm trying to hone in on right now is, so look, the marriage thing, right? The thing that women complain about the most. And I know this goes both ways anyway. But since you're here and you're a man right now, the thing that women complain about the most is that the men present themselves as one thing, one person. Then the women get married to them, and then they realize who this person really is. But at that point, they're in love with that guy. They're committed to him and all this, and then they realize that he is not anything of what he said he was. But this is this mask business is a large part of that, right? There's
a lot of it. There's masking. You have your parents. You have babies, mummies, boys. You have whether it's social media or not. Whatever your information you listen to, it has an imprint on you. And it obviously starts off with your primary circle, and there's loads of good things as well.
Right.
And then there's obviously the challenging things as well.
Yeah.
And when you haven't learned these sort of things about yourself, and obviously you're falling in love and you're getting married and all that sort of stuff, and then you get married. What I believe marriage or a job or even having children does, or even having money, what that does is expose you truly to who you are as a person.
Yeah. Because that person becomes, your spouse becomes a mirror to you, don't they?
If you're a good person in real life, and or let's say you're a bad person in real life, but you pretend to be a good person online, or a good person in front of your friends or families and everybody else, but underneath you're a horrible person, then what's the real mask behind you? Well, the real mask in front of you, the online mask, that's the biggest mask, and the one in front of people, but the one who you are with yourself, when nobody's watching, when it's only you and Allah.
Yeah. You know what Rasul said? He said that the real man is who is he behind closed doors. That's the real person.
Yeah.
It's not who he is out in the world.
It's easy to be a nice, happy, joyous person a lovable person outside to your co-workers.
Because it's PR, isn't it?
Feed them some more at work and jump up the social hierarchy and all that sort of stuff. But our true value as Muslims and as humans in front of Allah, we're all equal. Your job and all that doesn't make you who you are.
Who are you really behind the curtain?
That's what really exposes.
So you know you're saying that the reason why you had these masks is because there's so much trauma you had to mask it with something.
I don't believe it was fully trauma. I think the trauma.
So what is the reason that you had to mask then?
It was just growing up in this world, and because of like my very fast brain, alhamdulillah, like obviously now I know it's like ADHD has a part to play in it and all that sort of stuff, but my enthusiasm and curiosity in this world. But growing up undiagnosed, being a neurodivergent, I never always had one friendship group. I never got on with people. I was always if you looked at birthday party videos or whatever it was, I was either hypersensitive or reacting to the kids around me. I was out in the back of the garden playing with sticks or looking at insects or animals and stuff like that, or watching a documentary on the TV.
Just very high functioning.
Yeah, so even from a child, and I was even told that I used to spend a lot of time with the elders instead of the kids and stuff. Right. So growing up like that, and always just being, I was always comfortable in my own world, but then so as a man, we go from as a nursery to year 6, we're allowed to cry, we're allowed to express our emotions.
And then afterwards, suddenly you have to suppress it.
Year 7, you're going to the big, wide world, secondary school. You're the youngest again, you're a baby in secondary school, and you have to suppress your emotions. So you suppress for example, your crying emotions, which you could show to your parents and stuff growing up. Yeah. Then obviously you're growing up, year 7 to year 11, obviously then you're hitting puberty, you're interacting with new social people, you haven't got that comfort of your friends again, primary school friends. But even my closest friends to me right now are the 1 or 2 primary school friends. I've got 1 or 2 from secondary school, and I've got yourself and a few others, and that's it for me, because now I've truly realized what friendship is. But I believe it was exploring the world, because I never got any grounding on life until this sort of last few years, because that's what really unlocked what was for me inside. Because we're living this externally faced world. So if you look at Khidr and Musa alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, he had knowledge of all the world and everything. He was known as like a leader of Banu Israel, one of the most the most intelligent prophet of this world, they used to say he was. But obviously in the story of Surah Al-Kahf and stuff, when he meets Khidr alayhi salam, in the stories of Khidr alayhi salam, he makes Musa alayhi salam acknowledge that you're not fully the most knowledgeable. There's a lot of internal knowledge that you need to unlock and access. And I believe that because of this world, it's very externally faced. So from year 6 to year 11, year 10, year 11, you move to different friendship groups. Then you have, for example, things like bullying going on. You have finding a pack. As boys, we're more externally faced. Girls, you're raised at home. You're told what's right, and you're disciplined. Girls are disciplined at home a lot more quicker, and they're brought up because they know they have to go and be wives. You have to go and prepare this and that. Guys, we're just thrown into the world more or less, and they're told find yourself or whatever. And then you go into uni, and parents send their children off to uni, whether they're practicing or not, or at home or whatever. And then you go into the uni and embrace a whole new world out there. And then you come back, and you could be seen as a completely different person, or you're more of a grounded person. You're being exposed to so many things, and then you got all these sort of things. Then you got provide for your families, you got provide for this and that, whatever. But you never went out shopping for your mum. You weren't given certain sort of responsibilities. Like, alhamdulillah, my parents made me, like, even my mum made me do ironing when I was 12 years old and stuff. My mum was like, you're going to get older, you go to uni, this and that, you need to learn how to do certain things. So alhamdulillah, my parents done the best with me, what they could. But a lot of people don't have that. So then they face this whole external world out there, and then they come back.
It's a shock to the system.
And then they come back home from uni. We've got 3 years out there, whatever it was. Come back home, and then topic of marriage. You're old enough to get married, whatever, blah blah blah. But in this Western society, I believe we mature later than people mature.
Yeah, I mean, literally, my article, not to keep banging on about it, but my article was literally about this, that the actual maturity for people in the West is taking place like mid-20s. That's when it begins. Because the rest of the time they're so busy just going through all the motions, school and uni and everything else. They haven't got time to.
You're not told how to be a good human being.
Yeah,
you're not told how to be authentic.
Yeah,
you're not told.
They haven't got time to understand themselves.
And for those who are unaware, like for example, crafty and shafty people, they know what they're doing because they know how to oppress and stuff. Whereas people who are in the whirlwind, who are discovering themselves, who are empaths, because they're more vulnerable to these sort of people. And I believe obviously everybody has a level of narcissism and empathy within them, because you need a bit to sort of preserve your bit of identity and yourself. But what's happened now is in this world, it's become more...
It's more negative, isn't
more
it?
Negative,
so people are masking more, yeah.
I. And then you're trying to discover yourself, but in the eyes of other people.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
a
end
lot
up losing
harder.
people, because the more you give them anyway, you're realizing your life doesn't evolve around them.
Yeah.
And you end up, when you're sleeping, you're alone anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you already
I want to go back to
Yeah,
the two things with going back to the mask thing, but just before that. So in terms of the article, I literally said the same thing that you're saying, is that when you're born, like, you know, your life is so much up till like the early 20s, your life is carved out completely for you. School, secondary school, university, all this kind of stuff. The child doesn't have time to get to know themselves. And that getting to know themselves process for older generations was taking place when they were like 11 or 12 or whatever. Now that process starts at 24, 25. That's when you start to get to know yourself. And by that time, you're already, for a lot of kids, are already married.
And obviously, you have like
so
biological issues and all that.
You can't get to know yourself while you're married at the same time. It's so dangerous.
And it starts in the education system as well, though, because you're not taught your strengths. You're not told about your personality. You're not told about, for example, your temperaments. And now, obviously, you got all these popular MBTI courses and all that sort of stuff. But they do have some part to play. But we're complex as human beings. But just to start that, if you're starting this process at the late age of 26, 27, why do you think people are having midlife crises in the 40s and 50s? But I believe that's coming way down younger now.
No, people, exactly what I said in my article, they're having their crisis at 25, 26.
Even kids, we're saying they're having the worst mental health pandemic ever now. Like,
because the pandemic itself was a crisis, because it's a shock to the system, because you're alone with yourself.
And I've talked to teachers and teaching assistants and stuff like that in schools and that, and they've said we're not even recovering now from the impact of the pandemic and stuff.
Yeah.
So imagine that. And then, you know, because I and yourself, we grew up in the age without technology, where you'd be outside on your bicycle and your mum screamed that you can get inside, or where are you, whatever. Even though I used to be hanging out, talking and whatever. And now we got technology, so we can notice the impact. Oh my God, I've been sucked into my phone like for so long. And that's back to what you mentioned earlier. That's how it started to impact me with this recent crisis going on. Yeah. That for the first 2 weeks, I was probably on my phone like, yo.
Yeah, it's stressful.
And then I started to notice, wait, actually, where was I previously in this state before? When my system was hyper aroused.
Where it come from,
And what mechanisms have I learned over the last sort of few years to sort of deregulate and get focused on again? Because...
But I want to ask you more about this mask, you see, because the thing is, I know you're saying this thing about like the trauma and you know, not having time with yourself and the identity and all this, and because the rest of the world is doing this, and you mentioned earlier the social media thing as well, and these popular personalities that we see. I know, because obviously I know you, and I know kind of what your views are on people and on the world, but I feel like people who are very hypersensitive, like yourself, and people who have learned that we ourselves have masks. You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
Yeah.
People who ourselves have learned that we have our own masks, and we put outside to the world, and we've done the introspection. We can see the masks on other people that other people can't.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird, isn't it? So and people don't trust you, do they? Because if you say that XYZ person, I don't like that person because there's something about him, everybody's just like, what are you on about? Because they fake themselves, so they only can subscribe to the fakeness of
only
the other.
Only when you realise your own fakeness and your own sins, your own sort of negative side,
then you can
and
see
your
it in
good
other
side,
people.
and your good side, because you notice when people are happy as individuals, as couples, you can notice it. But only until you notice it yourself. Like, that's, for example, how you see where empathy is developed.
Yeah.
Like, if you notice somebody sad on the side of the road, and
but you can spot a narcissist a mile off. Like, I went to get my tie sorted out I went to get my headlight sorted out a couple of days ago. As soon as I walked in, there was so much that the guy who I was dealing with, I could tell so much about him without even having the conversation with him. Just from the fact that he wasn't making eye contact with me, and just little interactions with him, I could tell this guy's got a lot of trouble in his life. You can just tell. Obviously, I didn't discuss it with him.
Them sort of people, they don't take the chance to work on themselves.
Yeah. And that was very clear. And not to pick on him, but it was very clear that this person, he's got issues, he's masking it.
But they'll project onto you.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was doing. Exactly what he was doing was, I went in, and I made a helpful suggestion, a very friendly, warm, helpful suggestion. And he basically he almost picked a fight with me, got very stroppy with me, very narky with me, very quickly. But because I knew because I knew where it was coming from, I just deflated it, and obviously I was desperate to get my car sorted. So but I knew where it was coming from.
Because you're not going to argue with that person, because they're arguing with a brick wall, and they will just accelerate it, make you look like a bad person, and you don't know what you might have gone for a car tire getting changed. You might have ended up with a bad engine.
I know, it's just exhaust missing or something. Yeah, but you could see it, and the thing is, I picked up literally the first conversation that I had with him on the phone. I knew something was off, but there was the only place that I could find to get my car sorted out, and I knew as soon as I spoke to him on the phone, I knew something was off. And as soon as I walked in, the lack of eye contact he was making with me, and a couple of things that he said very, very quickly, I just immediately knew something was off with this guy. But I also knew, I knew why as well. And I know what's happened is this guy's got a lot of trauma inside of him, right? He's not worked on those issues, and I'm not blaming him for that. I'm not blaming him for it. He's not, for whatever reason, he's not either not worked on those issues or not been able to work on those issues. But whatever it is, he's doing this job, he's got a job to do. And you can tell what's happening is there's people coming into this garage and they're giving him they're not necessarily giving him a hard time, but he's getting triggered constantly all the time. And he's in fight or flight mode all day long. His sympathetic nervous system is fully activated all the time. So the worst thing that I can do is to continue to
just get the job done and get out.
So I just, calmed myself down. I was like, look, I apologize. Wasn't meaning to offend you. All this kind of stuff, just deflate the whole thing. I just basically lowered the energy.
You gotta give a bit of sweetness and
warmed up to him, and then he was absolutely fine with me. He was perfect. He was actually really good with me, and he was joking around with me.
You never know. Some people, like, they are the traits, innit? Certain narcissistic traits and stuff like that. But some of these people, like, because they've not had any niceness, so I make up excuses for people, or I try to see through the lens of other people.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a conflict, like, with other people that I face myself, I'm like, okay, what if he woke up on the wrong side of the bed today? What if he has XYZ going on at home? What if he's had 1 million customers come to him today and telling him how to do his job when he's been changing tires for his last 25 years?
But in that moment, when you're desperate...
When you're desperate, but then
you're not able to think like that.
He's projecting onto me. But now even myself, I've learned how to bite my own tongue.
But you're calmer than me. I'm fiery, so you're quite calm.
When I was a lot more in fight... When you're in a traumatic state, so like they say males are more fight or
fight or flight,
fight or flight, and so I was a lot more reactive and stuff, because obviously we've only just known how to when you grow up, when you're unaware of like complex trauma and all these sort of things, that you've never known how to regulate. As men, we're not taught how to regulate. You sadly, like, obviously, our grandparents, our parents didn't have anybody to go to or speak to about their issues. So this is where the whole intergenerational...
And that's where the masking comes in as well. Yeah.
And it's like, for example, me pretending that I'm okay when I'm not.
Yeah.
Smiling when I'm not. And Islamically, we are taught, like, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ, he smiled all the time, even though he suffered the most as a human being on this planet. Yeah. But he still smiled. But then obviously, we're not taught about certain things, about standing up for yourself. So yeah, like a lot of the masking comes from there, because you're sort of building yourself up in this external world.
Yeah.
Like, even for example, your view of Allah, our view of Allah is that he's just some sort of theoretical concept, and our mask is only whilst we're out there, but when it comes back, we're on the prayer mat, our mask falls off.
This mask thing that you speak about, where Allah is concerned, the mask of ourselves. I was thinking, tell me what you think about this. I was thinking about this and I was thinking, like we view, I don't know how you feel about this, but when we meet another Muslim, when I meet you, I'm like, this is somebody that's a person of Allah, right?
Yeah.
But when I walk into the supermarket and there's a lady that's serving me who's not Muslim, I don't view her as a creation. And I know this is wrong, and I'm not saying this to be objective about it, but because of the way we've been raised, we should be seeing them as a creation of Allah as well. And everything is a creation of Allah.
Everyone and everything.
Yeah, but we don't do that though, do we?
We don't, but that's the world, that's all a part of our worldview. Like, in this materialistic, non-religious, secular worldview, we're taught that just trees and everything are just animate objects. They're flat objects. There's no life form to them.
But you've had conversations with birds, haven't you?
Like you could speak to birds. You give your salam, like walking in nature. You look at all the prophets.
Yeah, tell me. Like, you told me this story once, and then I told you some stories a couple of weeks later, because you were the one who taught me like give salam to the birds and to the plants, and they respond to you.
I think I learned it from one sheikh and stuff.
What happened when you gave salam to the bird once?
I think sometimes I think that was at a time when I was a lot more conflicted inside.
Right.
And I remember the thing about just giving salam to nature and giving salam to bird. And I was going through something, and then it just came by and I gave salam to the bird. But internally, I felt the conversation change inside me.
Yeah.
Like it was like a comforting thing.
Yeah,
and you can't obviously
the exact same
that.
thing happened to me. So when you taught me this, I know you mentioned it to me because we were having this conversation. You taught me this, and I was doing qigong in the back garden, and this little robin landed on this little plant thing. Right, I said salam to the robin, and I honestly feel like it said something to me. I know it sounds really out there and weird, and it happened to me a couple of times. And thing is, what everybody else was thinking, what this robin was saying to me was different to what everybody else was thinking, and it was what I was feeling anyway.
It's a sign from I believe it's a sign from Allah, innit? Allah gives you signs in so many ways, and He tells us that directly in the Quran. I'm not anybody religious or anything like that, but I fully.
Have you ever tried like touching a plant and just holding it, and then it has a conversation with you, the plant?
No, I've not.
So I know this is gonna sound so weird, but I've done this. Every time I do this, I get like an energetic imprint. If you touch a plant, you just touch it like this. You just touch it and you just say salam to the plant with your heart. It almost always gives you a flash or an image or says something to you. And it's happened to I did it once. I was in some area when I first moved to Nottingham. I was in some area. I was just walking past and I just touched this plant. And literally, I got this feeling of there are problematic people in this area, like there's troublemakers in this area. So I just moved away. I just went. No, I wasn't living there. I was walking around there. I just went somewhere else, and I realized somebody then told me afterwards, there's a lot of troublemakers in that area. Yeah. And then another time, I was in somebody else's back garden, and I touched this plant, and I just kind of said salam with my heart, and it said that the lady of the house, she's had some episodes where she's been really upset. And then I went back into the house, and you could tell that this woman had a very like sad, depressed life.
You never know. You'd be surprised at how much knowledge and stuff that we lost. There's probably a whole lot of knowledge and books on this, even Islamic history. Like,
it's all disappeared.
They said that, for example, when the Mongols and stuff came to the Baghdad and stuff. The books that were destroyed, it made the rivers black. So imagine how much spiritual and sciences and stuff were lost then.
We have lost a lot.
And now it's like.
But when you try, the thing is, when you try and bring this back now, people look at you.
Think you're strange or
people look at you funny.
But I believe that's gone back to the. If you look, all of this goes back into the Enlightenment and stuff like that. It's all about your worldview. Like that's why even like we're divorced from our religious worldview. It's not just about, like, for example, our prayer and stuff, like you're talking about the interaction supermarket. Well, I think another scholar said that you should see everyone and everything as a possible wali of Allah, innit?
I want to talk about like taking the mask off with Allah, right? Because this thing that you're talking about, the people that are running around all around us that have masks, because I have a huge problem with this. As soon as when I meet people, if I go to a dinner party, if I go to a wedding, if I go to a gathering, if I go to wherever, I can see past that mask. And I'm not saying this to blow my own trumpet, and I'm not saying this to be cynical either. I'm saying this because I've spent a lot of time doing the work on myself, right? That's why you and I are friends. That's exactly why you and I are good friends, even though we're at such a distance. I've met you physically. I've met you after 2 years.
But online, we were connected.
We're connected by our hearts. We're connected because we've had, and so, like sometimes you send me voice notes. I send you voice notes. We might not speak to each other for 4 months, but we both remember the conversation. That's the level of our friendship, is because you and I have connected on the inner work. That's what we've connected on, right? So wherever I go, I can see the mask that the person is putting on. I can see it, right? Because as you say, I've been doing, if you've done the work on taking the mask off of yourself, the problem with that is that always gets me into trouble, because when I'm hanging around with people, I am me. I'm not a masked version of myself. I'm me.
You're yourself.
I'm myself.
Your whole self.
Yeah, I'm not a masked version of myself. Whereas everybody else is a masked version, and then there's so many problems with that, because you doubt their intentions. You don't know what they're really about.
I feel that's what it is when you're like you were saying, hypersensitive as well. So you're picking up on the cues very quick. The cues, it's like when you're trying to, because you're reading the room, I have to sort of mentally think, okay, why am I here? What am I doing here? What am I here to get out of it? If I can contribute to the situation or my purpose, and then looking for a situation. So if I do get overwhelmed as well, like when I start reading in the room too much, then it's like, then I need to take a step out, refresh myself, okay, and then realizing, okay, even if, like, for example, the woman at the cashier is angry with me or whatever it is, like, just realizing, okay, look, maybe it's having a wrong day. Let me just lighten the burden on them and get out of it. My mask might be off, but they're not aware that the mask is off. And me calling out when somebody, the mask are now connecting it, is like your survival response. So, and naturally, your survival response is you obviously flight, fight mode and all that sort of stuff. That was meant to be used when a tiger or a predator was coming at us.
We're using it every day, all day.
But now it's ding, 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 ding. The notifications, they are them threats as well. And then,
every situation you're in.
Like, for example, whether it's outside, the mask that's developed with friends outside. Like, for example, ethnic minority boys that hang around with the groups and gangs and stuff, being the cool guys, the mask can develop there as well.
Massive masks.
That mask develops there, but then if you can't take that mask off and bring it home, you're gonna be treating your mum and dad like
exactly the same, and your wives,
and you can't see any of that. And so a lot of this masking stuff is basically a part of your identity, but not even knowing how it's linked to like your survival
So okay, let me ask you this question then: How did you learn to take it off?
But sometimes the last to show you rock bottom in order for you to get up.
So you literally had to be taken through, and that's why you just forced it off.
I felt like, for example, the COVID years, they exposed me to myself, like for my deeper core, when without myself, without being around anybody, because I moved to London a week before lockdown.
Right, and then you were there on your own.
I was supposed to start a new job.
You were in isolation.
Yeah, like, and being away from family, and then it came to a point where I couldn't see my family, I think so 4 or 5 months at a time. Everything's all over the phone. And this online world
just
was
with
all
yourself.
There, and just with yourself. So like, you can't relate with anybody, you can't see what's going on, and you've always, okay, one of the masks is you being the perfect son. You're trying to be a good son, you're trying to be a good spouse, you're trying to be a good sibling, you're trying to be a good friend, you're not trying to keep everything up. And especially as a person with ADHD and stuff, when you're undiagnosed with all these sort of things, you're just juggling all these things. And you don't know how to put them down because your brain is so used to it, because you get the dopamine as well of people pleasing. You get the dopamine of fixing people's problems. You get the dopamine of always being there and trying to be the savior for everybody. And for me,
that disappears when you're in isolation. It goes,
For example, I'm the eldest sibling as well, and I'm one of the eldest cousins in my family. But right. For example, I was kicked out of school.
Right.
Then I got back into school. And then I went to uni. I went to uni, came back. I went through certain failures in life, like in terms of careers and stuff. You could even classify in stereotypical Asian culture being diagnosed with disabilities and mental health issues and neurodiversity and stuff as being a taboo thing. Nobody's going to want you X, Y, Z. So then you're putting on this brave face again, which is a masking thing again, and your survival response. And when you're not attuned into it, and when you become hyper, like when you're in fight or flight mode and when your survival response, when you're masking, anything else that comes into you, any new form of information that comes in, it's like, it's a threat. What am I doing here? Am I reacting? How is this person energy impacting me? Like, because I started to become hyper aware, it's like, okay, now I've started to shift it. Okay, so the more I know about you, Khuram, the more I know about my brother or my sister or my friend, the better I know how to treat them. Because we didn't know how to treat ourselves.
But nobody's making that effort.
Nobody's making that effort. And you could send them all these books and self-awareness things or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But only when Allah makes you realize that. So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, he had the cave of Hira. He had all these caves that he used to go into, and Allah gave him that solitude.
Yeah, the isolation.
And I felt that COVID period, them 2 years, was Allah giving me that, because I was more externally faced. I was more doing things for people and whatever, blah. But I realized over that time, like when for example, I've been through therapy, I've been through counseling, I've had coaching and stuff like that. So because I wanted to learn more about myself. There was a lot of things that I couldn't understand because I never knew that.
Yeah.
I needed them.
But wouldn't you say like, so, because I had this conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago, because he's found himself ironically in a very isolated situation. And I said that, and he said that, his life's been he's seen a lot of, I don't know how to explain it, but he was, because I don't want to give too much away about him, but he basically said that he's seen the goodness from Allah for the last several years, and all of a sudden that kind of relationship between him and Allah, he feels like it's changed, where Allah's taking him through a different path, right? And he said he has suddenly ironically become very isolated. He made a couple of life choices, made a couple of career choices that was supposed to go one way, and then there's this like sudden death, sudden surprise, and now he's become really isolated. And I don't think he was really getting it when I was saying it to him, but I was saying to him that, if you're being isolated, that means that I feel like, because I've been through this myself, I feel like Allah is gonna really take your. I wasn't saying it in these terms because I'm learning this now new from you, but basically it's a process where Allah strips all the mask off of you and exposes you for who you really are. But it's not a punishment. It's like a
awakening.
It's an awakening, yeah. But that's a very difficult process, number one, and it's a lengthy process. It doesn't happen within 5 days.
It doesn't.
And you have to be isolated for that. But in this modern day and age, you can't
go to be isolated because people are, what are you doing?
Yeah,
where have you been?
You can't go and hide in a cave in this day and age, right? So the isolation that takes place in this day and age is a very different kind of isolation.
Internal isolation.
Yeah, you become isolated in a way where you kind of are amongst the people, but you're not.
Yeah. And that's like disassociation. That's what it's called. There's all these sort of things. It's like, you could describe life like, the masking is like, let's say you're an onion, but imagine yourself as
layers
an onion.
Of onion,
And all our life, we've just been growing and growing, and we've got all these layers, but the core of you is inside.
Yeah.
So Allah sometimes has to...
He puts you in isolation to take those layers off.
We sometimes go back into the cycle of going back out there and whatever, and Allah's given you this. But Allah's told us in the manual, in the Quran, that you're going to be tested with your life, your wealth, your children, your relations. You're going to be tested with everything, because all the prophets were tested in it. So who are we? Who are we?
Yeah.
And that's what it all comes to. But many of our people... because we come from a fear-based culture and we are afraid of change, we're like, okay, what's Allah teaching me now?
Yeah.
Why can't I just be comfortable with the decision with it? Like, I know what everybody else is saying, but sometimes I'll be firm. And even if your trauma response has been just shutting your mouth for all these years, but even the nicest person will come out and put you in its place, because the nicest person can have enough. And it's not like you get walked over, and that's the thing. Like, for example, only until you've been left alone for your
left to your own devices,
and when you're exposed to actually the devil, when you're on your own, you will start to realize when the devil's coming at you, when Allah's there with you. What Allah's reminders are. They say there's, for example, triggers.
Yeah.
The word triggers.
Yeah.
There's also this other word called glimpses. The glimpse of the beautiful moments.
Right.
Which people don't talk about. And for example, you're talking about the bird earlier.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's what I started to do nowadays. Is called mindfulness and all these sort of things. But when you start to attune to smaller situations, so for example, that masking thing, like, when you're built with it, like, sometimes you could wake up angry and stuff, and that's you have your mask, you have your past self, you could call it, your unaware self that's come back, and the way you're sort of treating people, it can be out of character for you. Do you, when you like behaving out of character, that's basically like your fitra, your state of nature, then your natural self, your truest self, without anybody or anything there. I feel we lose that by the time we're going into secondary school. Why does it say, bring your inner child back, or bring all these sort of things there? But in these sort of last 2 years, I started to do the things that I feel my inner child would have liked. And that's where, like, for example, your fitra in your child, like, before you hit puberty and all that sort of stuff, that's where it all goes away,
I think the other thing with the pandemic is that, like, a lot of, like, guys who were working in offices and out of the house, and then they came home, and then they were stuck at home, and then their masks came off. And their wives realized who these men really are. Like, this is who my husband really is. Because the rest of the time he was able to mask it because he's at work, he's away, he comes home. But
also, like, they say men and women shouldn't be in the house too long together.
Yeah, for too long. But I mean, the masks were
masks
coming
are all off,
yeah.
and you're being exposed to what people are.
Yeah.
And even, for example, is like, you could call it masking as well, but even like, for example, your mum coming into the room whilst you're working from home and saying, "Oh, like get up, like you're just at home and blah blah blah." But if you're, it's all about how you respond with these sort of things. It's like only until you've not been only until you've been exposed to that mask, your own identity, who the devil is, because even in the Quran it says your devil is your open manifest enemy from north, south, east, and west. I think in the Hadith, the closest meaning. But we've not grown up in the world acknowledging that. We're not told about how evil he is. And obviously when you got all these mental health things and you got the survival responses are self-soothing. Whether it's addictions, whether it's eating junk food, sugar, whatever it is, it's like they're all forms of escapism, but it's also a form of masking as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are eating a lot of sugar and cake and all this kind of stuff.
And we're not realizing I've got a sweet tooth as well. But it's like noticing the difference between should I eat a chocolate or should I eat a date.
Yeah, it's just hiding from yourself, don't it?
But it's all about the core of yourself. That mask can make you not achieve your full potential. Because let's say, for example, me as a sort of agency owner, whatever, blah blah blah.
In fact, you've come on to work. I want to talk to you more about the work thing because I was going to ask you that anyway. So in terms of career, right? So you talk about masking and you talk about this outward appearance that everybody has. The world, this capitalist world that we live in, is all a mask, right? You're given this illusion, the American dream, and you put your money in the bank and it'll do this for you, and blah blah. And all of these things are masks because the reality of what those things are, like it's the banking.
It's all a facade.
It's all a facade. Everything's a facade.
I feel it's the whole career thing. It's all a facade. I've been from working in a corner shop from the age of 10 years old, alhamdulillah, because of my dad. It helped me learn a lot of things, a lot of skills and stuff, to then working as a youth worker in a secondary school. I volunteered in accountancy for 2 years. I'd done events organisation. Then I went to, I got a degree in international relations, came out, I ended up working in a secondary school with special needs students, with SEND, special needs and disabled children. And then I went again into the corporate world and working in like my new world, like it was a new world, new career in marketing and being outside, like digital stuff and press and all that sort of stuff. I was very intense, and the career progression is beautiful. Like financially, you think of it as wow, but until like, for example, only when it comes to trying things, you learn what's good for you and not.
Yeah.
But if your mask is in this world, like materialist worldview, that like I've got to build myself up to be a careerist because auntie's gonna ask me, "Ke karna pe, what are you doing?" or whatever, blah blah blah, or my office is kam karna, or I work in offices.
Like I'm a doctor or I'm a lawyer or whatever.
And they're all masks. It's all a facade.
Yeah. So this is why I want to ask you about this facade, right? This is exactly what I want to ask you.
Facade is mask.
Yeah. But this is exactly what I want to ask you, because this entire world that we're living in right now, right? These people with 1 million followers and the people with all this money and everything. This whole entire thing is a facade, right?
Yeah.
When you really drill into what this thing is about, like the banking system. When you really drill into it, you realize the whole thing is phony. It's like a Ponzi scheme.
It's all a phony thing because masking is pretending everything is okay when it's not.
And it's not. But this guy was saying to me a couple of days ago. He was saying that the only way you can make money in this world at the moment,
be corrupt.
Yeah. That because this world is a massive facade and this world is so fake, that the only way you can make money is to be as fake and as full of facade as this world is. Do you think that's true?
No.
Okay.
Like, you don't have to be corrupt. Who says you have to be corrupt?
No, he's not saying. He's not saying. He's not.
You have to play the game. Or you got to be a fraudie because everybody else is a fraudie. I mean, like, in certain ways,
he wasn't being malicious about it.
You got to be crafty. Well, not crafty, but you got to know if you're getting ripped off and stuff. You got to know how to save your money or whatever. Like, if you're thinking of it like that. But if you're going to be like fully start your own pyramid scheme and start rinsing people just because everybody else does it, then that's totally off.
He wasn't encouraging it.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is that the people that are making money right now in this life, they're only making money is because they're as fake as what this world is.
But I think it was a few weeks ago. I think it was a speech. I think it's by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and in one of it he mentions obviously like taxes and stuff like that. We have got to pay it and stuff like that. And so because other people are not paying their taxes or whatever, blah blah blah. But you, as a majority of the world, is 99% of the world is in poverty or whatever, that you then have to work so much more harder to provide for your family and stuff. But what I think Sheikh Hamza Yusuf said is that, okay, fair enough, if you can decrease that tax amount, as a duty to provide for your family, then. But if you're doing it whilst ripping everybody else off and being oppressive to other people, and
I'm not encouraging
then
it. I'm not saying
that's a whole nother thing. But I mean, if you're like, it's a whole nother topic. But I mean, you don't have to follow the script, because if you're in tune with your fitra, like, I feel that, for example, our people can get too much into dodging the taxes and whatever, blah blah blah, and they forget about progression, or forget about internal happiness. Like, if I'm not as a man or as a person or as a breadwinner, you're working 8 hours a day in a job, yeah. If that job isn't making you fulfilled or happy or whatever it is, and then you're coming home and being miserable to your family and stuff, then what? But if you are doing it, like, if you are working in a smarter way, then providing for your family, and you got more time to give to your community and stuff.
What I'm saying is, I don't know any, like, I know a lot of people that have made a lot of money. There's a lot of people that have made money. A lot of people I know that have made money. It's not been done ethically.
How long does it last them, though?
Yeah, and also the other thing that I'm saying is, even the ones where their intentions are good and they have money, what they are dealing with is still a facade.
It is a facade. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It is a facade. Like, for example, I'm going to tell you now. So last week I've had to let go or leave one of my clients.
Right.
Because of a job decision that I've made in my life now. But the thing is, like, it was sad for the business owners, but I also know a friend of mine who's in the similar field to me, but he's also been dealing with that industry for a longer time. So for me, it was like, okay, the masking thing for me is like, yo, if I stick with this client and they get another franchise, I'm going to be raking in the future.
Right.
Yeah. That masking level on me, like, a few years ago, I'd be like, yo, this is juicy, yeah? Like, but now I know that actually if I took that on, then I'm going to be a bit more, I'm going to have my main job. I'm going to be a bit more stressed after work. I'm going to get that extra money.
It's just knowing yourself, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is, knowing yourself. But I know for my friend who's in that industry, he's right now, my friend is a competitor with me. But I know I'm not going to lose that, because if I could give it to my friend, alhamdulillah, it would end up supporting him. And I believe there's certain people who do a better job than me. So if I know that that's his strength and stuff, why not just give that to him? And inshallah, where I've started to ground, and what I found out about myself in the last 2 years, that okay, I've got to work with where my strengths are.
And how have you been grounding yourself? What have you been doing to ground yourself?
Starting off with that tips that you gave me, like,
okay.
So for example, the earthing mat.
Okay, right. Mat. So you've literally been doing it physically.
Yeah.
You've been doing it physically.
So physically, like.
Shall I tell you something really interesting then along those lines?
Yeah.
There are some especially for men. There's some acupuncture points on the body. There's a point here on the neck, right next to the carotid artery.
Yeah.
Right, where your pulse is, and there's a point on just below the knee. And then they're the two main points that I know. And these are actually known as, so the human body is in terms of like, so you have earth, fire, water, and air.
Yeah.
You have the cosmic heavens thing.
Yeah, avatar stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have these temperaments and everything, right? So these points on the body are actually earthing points. So if you have too much fire in your body, I just learned this a couple of days ago. If you have too much fire in your body and you have too much water in your body, we're not talking about edema now. We're talking about in terms of your temperament.
Your temperament,
You've become too much fiery and too much watery.
Yeah.
What you can do is you can stick the needle into those points and you can earth the body, because earth puts out fire.
Fire, yeah.
Because earth extinguishes fire and earth absorbs water. Do you get it?
So would it be? Oh yeah, I'm thinking of physically. Would it be the moisture
from
the atmosphere? Or
it is like physically as well. It is a physiological
energy.
So even physically, if you have water and you apply it to the earth it absorbs the water, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you apply earth, like it's a lot of fires.
The heat's inside you. So it's
but you were a former firefighter. You know that you can, if you pour soil over fire, the fire goes out, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, moisture. Working, that
so
makes sense.
it takes the earth takes moisture away. So you can actually earth the body. So there's the one way of earthing, obviously, is the grounding, walking barefoot and everything. other ways of earthing. There's another way of earthing the body, earthing yourself in terms of temperament. You can actually use acupuncture to do it.
Oh.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting is I've just started watching the Tupac documentary called Dear Mama.
Right. Was Jada Pinkett Smith in there?
No, allow her. But it talks about it's actually about his mum, Afeni Shakur, and him, and she was actually one of the leaders of the Black Panthers in America.
Right.
Yeah. And surprisingly, Matulu Shakur, Tupac's stepfather, he learned acupuncture to de-traumatize the black community.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
And when you said that before this talk, I was like,
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Like how
acupuncture is so powerful when it comes to regulating emotions in the body. It's ridiculous.
But it's seen as a taboo thing. But even
why is it seen as a taboo thing?
Because we're physical human beings. We don't need. We're taught not to need. And we're not even told about these things because you can be overstimulated your entire life, and then you got mental health issues, and you got all this sort of stuff. But you never told how to deregulate with grounding.
There's a point between your eyebrows that you can put there. You put the needle right in there. I'll do this. I'll do it after the camera on you, and it's known as the yin tang point. Yeah. And it calms the mind down. Takes away headaches, so it actually helps like with the flu and stuff like that as well.
That's interesting.
But it actually, we do have this concept in Islam, the third eye concept. It actually enhances the third eye. So the third eye being like your inner eye, it enhances it. Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, I feel there's a lot of this stuff that was very important and linked with it now.
But that knowledge is lost
because of this whole. We're living in this industrial society where cure is profitable.
But maybe this is why Tupac Shakur. Maybe this is why he was, because he was very wise beyond his age.
I'm 28 now. He died at 25.
Wow.
But his mind,
it was like a 40-year-old.
He was my awakening. Like as a youngster growing up, I respect the black community, and they were my hopes. Like I done a bit of rap and poetry and all that. And but as Tupac as a leader, as a person, I found him to be like, for example, the next Malcolm X. And for a person who's given the world's riches, but then to say, bang, it means nothing. But
that's
that was
very interesting.
At the age of 24, 25. And
that's
then
phenomenal.
even, for example, Biggie Smalls, he started to realize, wait, this is all a facade. And they want to kill the East Coast, West Coast beef. There was all this time when positive change.
But Akala's very switched on like this now, isn't he?
Akala, all of these guys, when you switch on to a point when you're just about to make change, when you realize the facade for what it is, the mask for what it is.
Yeah.
Then you're like, and now am I going to continue going into them negative behaviors or dealing with them negative people, or am I going to keep them bounds and limits, but by Allah's instruction, not misdo my duties and my rights towards them, yeah? But am I going to continue like in my life, because I might be dishonest with myself, or I'm going to just continue the way not being am I just going to continue masking myself or being a rubbish human being? Am I going to be a rubbish human being to my family or my friends, or to continue in a job that's not good for me, or feel that it's going to bring more stress to me and make my symptoms worse or my life more hectic? Why should I do that?
Yeah.
So it's all about your core self, but the grounding stuff, like
so you've done grounding in terms of earthing.
Earthing, prayer is
obviously
Islam,
grounding. Yeah.
We've got the head main points.
But but this is what I'm saying, because the entire world is praying. Right, you can get people that are out there that are very religious, that are praying and everything, but they're not. They still have a mask on.
But they'll tell you it's still weird to go and pray on flat grass though, with bare feet and bare hand.
Okay, because I told you to do that, didn't I?
And
first time I prayed on the grass with my hands on my feet, bare hands and feet. Oh my God, it was a game changer.
The energy, the feeling that you'll get, where it says in the Quran, like what is it in Islamic hadith in the Quran and stuff, to the closest meaning that the whole entire earth is made for a place to worship. Yeah. But obviously then you got fabric, you got carpet, you don't know where it's made out of plastic.
Well, these shoes are made out of plastic as well, aren't they? One of the things that I want to do, because of my circumstances and everything, but when I get into a particular situation that I want to be in, one of the things that I want to try, I don't know if I'm definitely going to do this, but I want to get a dedicated room. And I want to lay down like some copper fabric in the room, like a copper sheet. But like, copper fabric, it feels quite cotton, not a proper cottony, but it feels a bit like nylon-y, cottony, right? It doesn't feel plastic. You get like a copper sheet. It almost feels like a bed sheet. It's a bit more rough than that. You lay it down, it's connect a wire to it, and you ground it to the outside. You read namaz on that, pray salah on that.
That'd be good, because then you have it internally in the summer. Then you'll have that. But I mean, right now the grounding mat underneath my desk whilst I'm using computer,
Yeah.
that unloads
Okay.
the overstimulation.
So it does help you.
So that's, I believe, not anecdotally or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
by trialing these or testing, because I've always been curious to try things to. My main thing is trying to live. My main thing is trying to live as the most efficient human being as possible in a way and healthiest way. So I'm looking for all these mechanisms in a way to actually make that happen. So I know, for example, the last 2 years of grounding, whether it's the mat at home or outside in the grass in the summer and stuff, just notice the impact that ground is having, and then to mentally feel and acknowledge that actually I'm being deregulated. Positive ions that they leave your body.
I think positive ions leave your body, negative ions come into the body.
So that cycle is then continuing with the earth.
And Qigong's very good for it as well.
So all of these sort of things, and being outside, being in the nature, being the elements, there's a lot of these sort of things.
So one of the things that I've been doing, I mean, you can't see it on camera, but there's all these, you must have seen it when you drove in, there's all these cows outside roaming around on the fields.
Touch the cows.
What I do, I don't touch them. What I do, because they do come up to the fence. So what I try and do, I don't get to do it enough.
Stare down.
I just go and just stand amongst them.
Yeah.
And it's just very calming.
That is very similar. Like, for example, I've got a pet cat.
Yeah.
And like my family bought the cat in the last few years, and she's actually about 2 years old, nearly less 2 years as well. And because of working at home and stuff like that, you will notice the grounding benefits of having a cat.
Yeah.
And that, like, for example, the sunnah in it.
But the Turkish talk about that. The Turkish say that the cats absorb electromagnetic energy from you. So they absorb all your negative energy.
Like, even like, for example, even on a day-to-day basis, I put my head next to hers like that.
And she bumps you.
And her head is literally like that. And for like, even if it's like 2 seconds.
It calms you.
And it calms me. Or I'd rub a part of, like, they say her, like, behind her neck and her back, there's like points as well where she sort of destimulates as well. So, and regulates herself. But
there's too much, all these mobile phone masks and all this kind of stuff. It's just too much. It's just too much of the wrong kind of energy.
It's too much. But I started noticing that even like when my phone's in my pocket whilst I'm praying, I know there's some energy there. But if you just put your phone on the other side,
it makes a difference. Yeah,
it'll make a difference.
Yeah,
and that's what it is. We overstimulate with energy, and with all of this sort of stuff going on, like. Grounding, you could mean it in terms of this sense as well, but even grounding as a human being, I feel that you need a jama'ah, you need a community, you need to be belonging to somebody, because belonging to somebody, belonging to a family, belonging to a community. As a man, like for example, after the third or fourth century, they said it actually started off with Ali radiallahu anhu, but that's where chivalry and fatwa began with Ali radiallahu anhu. And with men, we were as packed. So if you watch Ertugrul and you watch all these sort of things, at the time after the 3rd, 4th century in the Abbasids, I believe it was as well, that's when they actually started formulating it, because the Islamic Empire started to expand. And obviously, if you got men just going around like after work nowadays, nowadays you got nowadays you, for example, you don't have these sort of groups. You do have, for example, mental health groups. So, for example, Andy's Man Club, which is available in every city now, more or less in the UK, which men go and talk to mental health. But we're talking different, not just the mental health. We're talking about a community pact, or do you like a wolf pack, for example. And within that, by being around like-minded people where you feel your community is, that's where you can start to feel more grounded as a human being. If you're around people that are not so-called on your wavelength, or where you feel your anxiety is going up and down, that shows there's something out of tune.
You just kind of float away from yourself.
That shows you out of tune. Then you are going to start feeling overstimulated and want to sit on your phone, and because you're distracted, because you're not truly feeling yourself.
There's a couple of my friends from uni who I hadn't seen for like 10, 15, 20 years. And we just literally on a Friday, we just go and sit at a cafe and do nothing. Yeah. It's not like a do nothing. It's just to be in the energy of another man.
Yeah.
And then I sit with them for about an hour. And I come, as soon as I leave, I just have a bit of tea. And I feel completely different.
You feel wicked.
Yeah, and it's not even what we're talking about. It's not any of those things. It's just to be in their energy.
And we're so disconnected like that now.
Yeah.
For example, I do wrestling twice a week.
Okay.
Olympic freestyle Sunnah wrestling in Peterborough, and that, like, I believe these are all little activities that we need to be doing. So as men, whether it's swimming, the Sunnah Sports, there's unbelievable.
Swimming in the spring is very grounding.
Unbelievable benefits behind the Sunnah Sports but they're not acknowledged because of popular sports, because of like football and stuff like that.
Can't stand football.
But as men, we're told to just by in this society, external facing society, we're told that just go by what's popular support and what will make you look attractive or this and that, whatever, blah blah blah. But when it comes to the crunch time, a real man has to know how to lead.
Yeah, because learning how to shoot a football into a goal is not going to help you in
might be good for your adrenaline rush and stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing, like, for example, my grounding was also learning how to face my fear. I've not been a fully aggressive guy in school or whatever. You're getting into fights wherever somebody starts me, whatever. But I was never the one to initiate or anything. But I realized actually in terms of my purpose that, okay, in the future, if I've got to be a husband or a father or stuff like that, I've got to learn how to be grounded. I've got to learn. So by facing my fear, like when somebody's choking you or when you got somebody who's 30, 40 kg on top of you and you're trying to get out and your survival instincts are there. So now you become friends with it. When you become friends with your fears like that, then it's like, okay, now you can choose when to use it or not. You're now in tune with your fight and flight response, because when you're in that crunching situation, you don't know when, like you don't know when you're gonna fold.
Yeah, but football's not gonna have you in those situations.
Yeah, like that is good for the adrenaline rush and whatever, but these sort of activities, and I feel that because we're so not sort of separated from them, we don't see the purpose on it. Or you might see Khabib and these MMA, these Dagestanis, but they're created in that environment.
They're very grounded, though. Yeah.
If you see them, they're working out on the side in the countryside. They're working out in the countryside with rocks, chopped up tree trunks as their weights.
Yeah.
So they're fully getting in that environment whilst we're sitting here on the PlayStation.
You know, have you seen me swims in rivers and everything?
And you see that, and even like, for example, I believe it's Islam, the one who just come after him now, who just won last week. What was the first thing he done after his match? He went back into the mountains of Dagestan and stood on top of the mountains with the boys and felt accomplished. Whereas all these Westerners, or 95% of the other wrestlers or whatever, end up in the pub getting wasted or this and that, and that's it, and that's their lifestyle.
Completely different.
And you look at, for example, what's his name, the most famous American podcaster, what's his name? Joe Rogan. The way he respects them, coming from this whole westernized aspect of the westernized culture, to say that their dedication towards the deen, the Islam, the distractions and stuff like that, you've got to see them. They're facing you. A part of your ground is starting to notice what's your enemy and what's not. And it's, for example, your fear is your enemy because Shaitan, he comes with your fears. Oh, you're going to be threatened with poverty. You're going to be threatened with, you're going to get hurt. How are you going to fold in terms of religion? How are you going to fold in terms of personality, in terms of another person? Let's say you're oppressive to me now, and am I just going to let that get away? Or am I just going to belittle my own self? Or am I just going to mask myself and not speak the truth just because you're oppressive or just because you disagree with me? I don't care if you're my family member or my parents or friend or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there comes a time where you need to speak your truth, or you're going to end up continue living your life as you're meant to be. As you're going to continue living life on everybody else's stream and masking. And that's where all this midlife crisis comes across. And there comes points where you realize, okay, your parents' masks have been on for so long, but they're only now realizing in the 50s or 60s or whatever it is that, we've been masked for long. We've not identified.
But they just maintain the habit.
And we've not been able to put in time with our children, or we're not, because
they just continue the habit.
So busy entertaining X, Y, Z, blah blah blah.
I find a lot of the elder generation, they recognize their mask, but they just push it down.
But because they're not told how to navigate it. But our generation, but because now it's coming out a lot more in our generation, why are you seeing all these sort of like divorce rates? Why are you seeing all these like things going on in society's families falling apart? Is because people have not been who they truly were.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, if you start to acknowledge it and you slowly start to embed it within people, you have to encourage them and give them a helping hand. Just because we've got knowledge, it doesn't give us the authority to be over-empowering.
But it's
Allah that enters that nur into the heart.
Going back to the elder generation, right? So just going back to the elder generation, the thing that I've noticed with the elder generation is there does come a time in their life where the mask is about to come off. They notice it, and then they just push it down.
Because it's easier just to go, because they're too...
Because they feel too old. I can't deal with this anymore.
They say people get set in their ways as well as you get more older and stuff, but that's what they say, that the child's mind is a curious mind, and that's where the most ideas come from, the mind that's fresh with knowledge and stuff. And then when you look into, for example, exercising, all these sort of things, like exercising and even petting cats and all this, you're building neurons in your brain, you're building new circuits and wiring in your brain. But after school, after education, have you asked any of your friends how many of them picked up a book? Or like, obviously in school, we're taught to do PE. I was fat and overweight like for a very, very long time, but I hated PE. Well, obviously now I discover my disabilities and stuff, but you're told to run around in a circle, or you're told to do your sports, but you're not feeling stimulated, not feeling energized, it's not fitting in with your strengths. So then in your mind, a trauma thing has gone into your mind that, oh my God, I hate sports, why should I do sports, why this and that? So you fed yourself that. Then these people that haven't picked up books or haven't sought knowledge or haven't had that chance to seek knowledge, they've already had that blueprint in their mind. So anything new is out of the comfort zone. Without the comfort zone, the change can't happen and stuff. So our people, it's about how receptive we are to accept change.
But that generation doesn't want to deal with it.
And it's their temperament as well, like how risk averse. Like, you know, for example, you got 4 siblings, they're all going to think different. 2 of them might be more negative and critical. 2 of them might be more positive, optimistic, or liberal, or whatever you want to call it, more idea formed. But they might be out of touch with reality, but the negative person might be more in tune with reality. But noticing where on the spectrum where you are, like in terms of that spectrum, how susceptible you are, it shows you, then that will allow you to sort of remove that mask. But because our people haven't had the knowledge before that, we're now in that generation, we've got that knowledge. We're living in mass information now. Whereas they had no information, but they had more wisdom. We have mass information, but we have little wisdom.
But we're being our masks are coming off more.
But now's the time that if we don't become wise in this moment, we'll be lost forever. Because we're in the time of history that truth and false is being exposed. Now I feel in the last few years, the grey areas vanished.
It's just black and white now.
And now you're being pushed towards that.
Yeah. You're either being pushed to the darkness or pushed to the white. Yeah.
And that first starts with a conversation in itself before asking all the world leaders to take an action. Well, how have we started? If I'm ripping you off as a business owner and we're talking about freeing Palestine or all this and that, we've got a long way to go, because that's the reason why they haven't been... That's the reason why we've got over 10k, 12, whatever k deaths now. Whereas overnight, a few years ago, they switched off the whole world. Do you understand what I'm saying? But it shows you where priorities are, that if you don't take on the mask yourself, because it's easier to mask yourself. Like, for example, the masking of Islam is that it's just literature. And all the inner work that isn't done, like, for example, the spiritual side with self-help books, you'd be surprised what's in a lot of these self-help books. Like, there's a negative individualism in these self-help books, but you're not a part of a community, you're not part of a jama'ah, like, where you're not belonging to anything. But our true belonging is to Allah. So, and only by getting through to Him, you have to learn how to delayer, you have to learn how to remove that mask. And there will come times in your life where He will show you where you've lived with that mask and where that's got you and where that's taking you. But the thing is, when you start to recognize who's causing that mask, where the devil is, where all these intergenerational trauma things are, your survival response and stuff, then you realize actually, okay, how to get closer to Allah. And it's only by actually getting closer to Allah you'll actually start to remove their masks.
So we're talking about the masks and everything, and then you were going to talk about like the relationship between the masks that we put on ourselves and Surah Waqiah and Surah Malik.
Religion, So I feel that only by getting to know Allah and that, only by getting to know Allah that you can remove the mask truly. Because then you're sort of and the mask come out through your nerves, your ego, you got trauma, you got all these sort of things going on. But what I found was in the darkest moment, it was Allah that rescued me. And I think it was around that time when you posted about on your Facebook about reciting Surah Waqiah and the benefits of it. And that was about 2020, I think it was.
Right, okay.
And then it was at that time when I was actually thinking curiously to read the Quran, just English, pure English, like Shakespearean English. Like my late auntie that passed away, she gave it as a gift to my mum. And I had it with me, and at that time, I started to read Surah Waqiah and Surah Mulk every night. I try my best to read it. And read through the translation of that. And when I started reading the English translation of the Quran, like, it wasn't obviously studying it analytically or whatever, but that then started to unlock a lot of things within myself. And that's when, for example, I started to do things for myself. So getting out in nature, because lockdown had us all indoors. So then I had to reset myself, think, okay, what have I missed out on? Because I was locked indoors, so I wasn't even splitting on my days, getting out, going for walks, just work, and stuff. And then by reciting Surah Waqiah and Surah Mulk, like, in terms of, like, for example, provision, it's not necessarily material provision, but
because risk is also knowledge, wisdom,
and becoming aware.
Yeah.
And that's what started to make me realize, like, for example, my life decision. It made it easier for me to navigate that. And it's one of our local mosque teacher, Hafiz Musaddiq, a local scholar. He said it a few weeks ago, that he goes, the deen is easy, but the dunya is hard. So the more we get lost in the dunya, because the analysis side of everything we can go on, because there's mass information, there's a lot of it, but the remedy is there. And that's what we've been missing, because we're told in this external facing world to go outside. And then, for example, our parents haven't seen the religion because they were just taught the Qaida and reading a bit of the Quran and praying in namaz. Then you have us lot, we're just growing up, and obviously you've got different sects, and if you're going into different mosques and stuff, but in the way modern world is detached from religion and making it a part of your way of life, like deen is a way of life, but we've only taught it like textbook standard.
Yeah.
So when you start to realize that that's where Allah tries you in challenging times, that's where your faith comes out, and inshallah we stick upon that as well and try our best to. But that's what it is. Then the path opens up for you by using that, because you realize actually Islam is your worldview, and however you sin or fall or whatever it is, you've got that.
But there's masks that have been put on the religion, haven't there? There's a lot of masks that have been put on the religion.
Beware, like that's what I say. You've got to be aware of your enemy the whole time around. You've got to be aware of your enemy, whatever way your form is, whether it's your masks or whether it's infiltration in society, religions or economics, your society, your job, your relationships, all these things. We're holistic human beings, we're whole human beings, so we are going to be impacted by everything. And so what if you're hypersensitive? That just means you're more aware of picking up everything. But alhamdulillah, man, it's been great.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming in today. I apologize for all this coughing. It just caught me out today because the weather's changed and everything. But I appreciate you making the journey to come out and see me, and it was an interesting conversation to talk about masks. Because I know we've had a lot of these conversations on the phone and stuff, and we've been talking about like how we deal with ourselves. Because the conversations that you and I are having, a lot of men are not having those with each other, and they don't know how to do, like you say, they don't know actually how to do the introspection, they don't know how to do the self-reflection, they don't know how to ground themselves.
It's weird to sit with yourself.
Huh?
It's weird to sit with yourself in silence and without headphones or no music on and walk down the road.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to your thoughts. Yeah,
it is odd. Because, I go for walks now. I mean, in London, you used to see it all the time. But now to even see it here up north, even like 30, 35, 40-year-olds, they're walking their dog. They've got the earphones on because they can't just take in the elements and just be alone with their thoughts. They've got something has to distract them.
Yeah.
I used to be able to drive all the way to London I'd drive from Nottingham all the way down to London, 2.5 hours. And I wouldn't even switch the radio on. Wow. I could just go all the way and just be alone with my thoughts. I used to be able to do that. Now I've kind of got myself into a bit of a bad habit because since my son's come along and he wants a bit of entertainment or whatever. But I can still do it if I need to. And people used to find that so odd. How are you, how can you not switch some music on in the car? Because people are so afraid to sit alone with their thoughts. They're so afraid of it.
But it's powerful once you learn how to do it.
It's very powerful. And, the thing that's even more powerful than that, going back to this concept of isolation, is if you find yourself isolated in a way that you're amongst people that are not your people, you're amongst people that are the complete opposite of who you would choose to be with, that's very isolating. But that really forces your mask to come off. It really forces it.
Because then you have to be who you have to be.
You have to be who you have to be, yeah. You haven't got any other choice.
Else, otherwise you're going to become them.
Yeah, and so and then this thing about how Allah covers your faults and he masks you from certain things and he covers you and everything. But if you get put into situations where your inner truth gets exposed without your control, like you don't want it to be exposed, but it gets exposed.
You don't want it to be in that way.
You know, and it's a very unpleasant thing, but it's actually very healing.
Yeah.
That's why I say that people who find themselves, people are so afraid of isolation, to be isolated from their friends, to be isolated from their families, to be isolated from the people that they know, to be isolated from the kind of to be isolated from your type of people. But it can be a massive blessing. It's painful, but it can be blessing.
It is, because then once you learn how to be okay with yourself, then you know how to add value to others, and that's what I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do with you.
Alhamdulillah, man. It's nice though.
But thank you anyway. Thanks for coming, and let's hope people benefit. Let's hope people benefit from this, inshallah. All right, man. Thanks.